I've been contemplating this, and I have a few loose theories that aren't really well thought out, but the question is interesting. I just want to ask the question. The question is why it seems like the left, specifically like the radical left, it seems like the left is always much better at language. They have a love for it. They have an aptitude for it. They are brilliant writers. They are really good with language. And it seems like the people on the right generally suck at language. You know, not all of them, obviously. I mean, there's some great writers that I love on the right, but as a whole, it seems like if you have a mastery of the English language and you're a brilliant author, and probably not just even English, you're likely on the left. Do you know why that is? And if that's true, how do we even deal with that?
Well, I'm sorry. Somebody in chat made me laugh.
I see you say you watched a hand. I don't know what that.
Somebody said carried enough time to watch her hands. I said I watched a hand. Okay. Well, look, the left is more. I don't know. This is something I've been thinking about a little bit more too, especially since our conversation with David Raboy. The architects of my old belief system of social justice ideology are very aware of how important language is. Now, that doesn't mean all the people who speak it. In fact, most of the masses who speak it are not. I think of them as puppets. They're tools.
Right. But the architects.
But the ones who are the architects, the ones who coin the phrases like white privilege and toxic masculinity and, you know, white fragility and all of these phrases, they're very aware of how language works and that's how you control people. And I mean, Orwell wrote a lot about this, about controlling people through language. And this has been going on, I guess.
But the question is, why are they aware and why is the right not aware?
But why are they aware? I don't know. I think part of it is that this isn't about it being an ideology that's on the left. This is just about it being a harmful ideology. I think that because it's a harmful ideology, the people who are the architects of it, who are designing these phrases and stuff, they're not as concerned with the immorality of manipulating people. And maybe on the right, you have people who subscribe to, I mean, I think there's probably more, I haven't read stats on this, but I think there's more Christians on the right. There's people who have different belief systems that are based around something else, that are based around something other than power and manipulation. And
so maybe it's better to not think of right and left. If we just say, like totalitarianism, authoritarianism versus individualism, I think that still holds true. It's the authoritarians who are good at writing.
Right. So the authoritarians are good at it because they don't mind. They think that the ends justify the means. They don't have a problem with manipulation because they think that they're doing good while they do it. They think it's a good thing. They don't mind. This you can see this illustrated just in individual one-on-one interactions. Like this guy, I don't know if I mentioned him or not. I think I did. But when I went to the Stop the Steal rally here in Austin, there was an old guy, like he could have been my grandfather, who was just spewing venom at me in my face and said he hopes I get COVID and die. Okay. That person, unity. That's fascinating. Yeah. Unity. But that's fascinating to me because in that person's, if you were to sit down with him as a psychologist and try and figure out what's going on inside of this guy, right? He's out there. I guarantee you, he thinks he's on the side of good. He thinks he's on the right side of history. And somehow he's convinced himself that it's okay to look at a fellow human being that you don't know, who hasn't said anything offensive to you, to look them in the face merely because of who they voted for and tell them that you hope they die. He thinks that's okay. Why? Because the ends justify the means. He's a part of an ideology that tells him you're on the right side of history, you're the good guys, So you don't need to evaluate anything about your behavior or your character, or it's not about introspection at all. It's about changing everyone else, which is what authoritarianism is. It's about controlling everyone else, controlling other people. So what offended him was that I wasn't under his control, or I wasn't under control of his belief system. All he knew about me was that I was a liberal who voted for Trump.
Yeah.
So that was deeply offensive to him. I'm therefore one of the evil people. I'm one of the bad guys. And it's okay for him to spew hatred and venom and say he hopes I die, because it doesn't matter what his means are. His ends are so good, right? And his psychology.
He might have been particularly mad at you that you said liberal and Trump, because that's something that doesn't compute in the NPC program, right?
Right. Well, and that's just a little tiny example of like one interaction with the person, I think, shows that. But on a broad scale, you can see that, and they don't have a problem with manipulation and with propaganda. And I mean, look at the way they're responding to the allegations that there's possible voter fraud that needs to be investigated. They don't want to investigate it. They don't care, because the ends justify the means to them. If the means are a fraudulent election, they don't care, because they feel like, well, the fraudulent election happened. I don't need to know if it was fraud or not, because the right outcome was achieved. The morally just and right. They think it's a morally just outcome that Biden won, so they don't care how he won.
Right. If Trump was actually Hitler, you wouldn't really care how Hitler lost.
Right. They believe exactly. Scott Adams has been doing a lot of tweets about this, kind of exposing that, you need to be asking yourself, I'm just going to paraphrase him, but he's sort of, a real journalist would be asking themselves that if the left really believed what they said, if they really believe what they say, and they believe Trump is Hitler, if you believe he's Hitler, would you fake election results to get a different outcome other than Hitler?
Sure, you would.
Yeah, so he's basically begging the question: is it that they don't believe he's Hitler, or do they believe he's Hitler? And then in which case they're probably willing to do anything.
They can't say they believe he's Hitler, but they didn't do anything. But they never do anything with the election. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, yeah. That's the best that I can come up with as well, is just like there's an individualist. I don't know. The best that I can come up with is like individualists don't want to control their people, so they're not motivated to be doing that, and non-individualists are fine manipulating and controlling other people. So, but that's a motivation thing. I wonder if is it a skill thing or just a motivation thing? Like, is there some kind of intrinsic? Do they have a better skill, or is it just motivation?
No. I think it's a motivation thing. I don't think it's a skill thing, to answer your question. I think they're equally talented writers on the right. It's just that's not their motivation. I mean, just like we talked about with David Raboy, when I was a social justice warrior, I spent a lot of time editing entries on Wikipedia and shaping and manipulating the narrative. In my little tiny corner of the universe, I did I did my part, right? And I felt okay doing that, because I thought I was on the side of righteousness and good. And because my ideology was built around shaping and changing and controlling other people, and not really anything about self-introspection and looking at my behaviors. Social justice ideology never called me to look at my own behaviors, unless it was in a dishonest way, to, unless you had broken some tripped a wire or broken some tenet, and then they wanted you to check your privilege. But even that wasn't real introspection. That just meant bow to our demands and speak the right words. It didn't mean actually
say the ritual. Do the ritual.
Right, say the ritual. It doesn't mean actually do introspection. Nothing about social justice ideology is built around introspection. And so, so if you look at people who are individualists, who look at the world differently from collectivists and totalitarians and authoritarians, individualists who believe in what? Personal responsibility. Well, someone who believes in personal responsibility is more in tune with themselves and, checking their own behaviors and their own thoughts. And for whatever reason, since I left social justice ideology, I've never had any motivation to edit Wikipedia. Right. It seems dishonest to me. It seems manipulative to me. So do I think I I used to think I was right then, right?
Yeah.
Do I think I'm right now that I was wrong then? Yes. But do I feel like I should be putting time into editing definitions and words and language on Wikipedia and trying to influence what other people think in that way? No, that seems dishonest to me in a way. Like doing a show with you is just speaking my opinions and you can take them or leave them and you can disagree with me or not. But going into a public dictionary and trying to shape the record in such a way, it just doesn't appeal to me in the same way. And I think that's about, I think that the core of that is motivation. I think
Yeah.
it's about, yeah.
Yeah. All right. I can buy that I can buy that it's motivation. I mean, I would see that. I would suspect there may be other psychological profiles with overlapping skill sets that might correlate
Yeah.
to writing, but I can maybe it's largely motivation.